Hello, my name's Laura Lear and welcome to the Thoughtful Leadership Podcast from Ambitious. Now, the debate around flexible working is still out there and it's obviously accelerated since the pandemic. Now, my guest today has lots of experience in this space. With 2/3 of businesses currently working in a hybrid model, it's a fascinating topic. She is currently the Chief People and Places Officer at the law firm TLT, and prior to this, she has led some businesses from a people perspective within KPMG and also Vodafone. So I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast today, Helen Hodgkinson. Thank you. It's really nice to have you, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. Agile working, I know you are quite passionate about this topic and you've been quite pioneering, particularly in, I'd say the law or legal sector is reasonably traditional. Yeah. So why is it so important and what have you done within the TLT business?
So flexibility has always been important because nobody's ever done a 9-to-5 day, ever. And so therefore that ability to balance, it's competing pressures all the time. You know, life's busy, isn't it? Doesn't matter what your home life looks like, your work life is always pretty involved. So the opportunity to allow people to organise their day to meet all those competing pressures just makes absolute sense to me. And you're right, I've been really lucky to have worked in businesses that were early adopters. KPMG, Vodafone definitely were. You know, Vodafone had something to sell as part of it because they sell the ability to be flexible. But actually what it's resulted in is productivity. You know, what you get from people if you trust them is you get their best contribution. And COVID was really interesting for me. You know, the pandemic, we've all kind of slightly pixelated it out of what we remember, haven't we? Which is just amazing when you think about how difficult that time was, but also some of the stuff it gave us. And what it gave us is a real humanisation. And that's the bit for me that people have completely lost. You know, that recognition that every single one of us was trying to deal with something in the way that was right for our life and our home. Now we as a business at that point had one of our most successful years. We did the thing that everybody did. You know, we looked into the abyss when it first happened. The web, oh my God, what happens next?
Of course.
And then actually scrambled about, got everybody working from home. We were lucky that we could. Although, albeit our facilities team, which is also a team that you know that I look after, they were the ones who brilliantly, and like troopers, went in and made sure the buildings were still operated. But we actually, you know, what we found was when you trust people and you give them clear direction, you just get the best out of them. And we took that with us afterwards. And that connection, that genuine engagement, that real engagement capital, that by being bold, and it is bold to stay fully flexible, we've just continued that race trajectory.
And when you say fully flexible, is that, do people come into the office? Are they asked to come in 2 days a week or 1 day a week? What's the sort of policy there?
It's interesting because everyone always goes straight for flexibility is about location. And it isn't. Flexibility is about location, hours, and the environment that you work in. So, you know, we are a client-focused business. So our people always did some home, some office. But those went to clients, you know, because we work with clients. So, you know, that ability to choose where you need to be to give the best. And the principle is absolutely client first, team, then individual. And that just gives everyone the focus of understanding, okay, so how am I going to make that decision? But hours is the most important part of flexibility, mainly because of commutes. Let's be clear, you know, they're expensive and they're difficult and they're tough and they're dead time. But also because most people are managing quite significant outlays when it comes to whatever your caring responsibilities look like. So you could be caring for older people, you could be caring for children. But, you know, I remember the days when my childcare bill was bigger than my mortgage. Well, yeah, it just makes me cry still now. I love the fact that we've got the ability to help our people not have that. And again, another one that slipped out media narrative is the bit around the cost of living crisis. It's still a thing. And a commuting cost and childcare costs, caring costs, there's significant outlays for people. So that ability to flex your hours to meet some of those needs, again, it's just a woman.
And this is kind of absolutely key, isn't it, to sort of driving a thoughtful business forward. And this is obviously the kind of focus of this podcast. It's really interesting to sort of hear you sort of explain that a little bit more. I'm interested, did you meet barriers in terms of the leadership team?
So you can see me smiling. We sat in a room, and for the first time in a long time as an executive team. and with a significant amount of senior leaders in the room. There were some males and there were some females, and there is some gender differences in this. There is no doubt that they're becoming less. And talked about the fact that it didn't make any sense to undo what was already working. And that was a bit basing this in the productivity and the profitability that you'd had. However, you might be a leader, but you're also a human being. And so you could absolutely see head and heart going, and you could see by heart, absolutely most of those leaders in that room knew it was the right decision. By head was, do you know what, that's not how I grew up. What about this? And shouldn't we be doing that? And shouldn't we? And there was a leap of faith, an absolute leap of faith, but based on, as I say, best predictor of future performance is past performance. The ability to leap of faith in relation to that. Now, has it been a smooth journey? Of course it hasn't. We've had moments of, look, everyone else is doing it. We must mandate days back in the office. The truth is, because, we look at what our people do and we check in on them and we make sure they've still got some connections, that is the right thing to do. Most people average 2 or 3 days in the office, which is what every single mandated policy is asking for.
Yeah.
But actually, they also do that on the basis of life cycles. No 2 days are the same. No 2 weeks for me are the same. So just that ability to take that choice, but knowing I still need to do my job.
And why is this so important in terms of future generations and recruitment, that employer brand?
Let me talk specifically about gender diversity. So if you've got a gender diversity policy and you've mandated days back in the office, then you're in complete contradiction to what that policy is trying to achieve. Flexibility is primarily a women's issue. It's not exclusively. Women still take on the predominant amount of caring responsibilities in the home, whether that's childcare or elder care. Now, I'm particularly knowing that beautiful sandwich, I have to say. But that doesn't mean the men don't want to be involved in that debate. 80%, let's be clear, 80% of your workforce has got some kind of care responsibilities. Sure. So this applies to many. Men absolutely want to be part of that provision. It's just not been available to them before. So flexibility for all means that there is more presence in the home from whatever your unit looks like, from both parts of that unit. And that is a gift. Yeah, that is a real gift. And it came up for us in storytelling. I hear of particularly men who'll say to me, I sit down and have dinner with my children. I've never done that before. Crazy or better. However, I've got it's massively precious. It's massively precious. I'm at the stage now where it's taking parents to hospital appointments. All of that normally I'd have to have a day off. I don't have to have a day off because what I do is I crack on and do that and then I get more work done later. So it's so important in just balancing those responsibilities in the home, whatever your home looks like.
And then in terms of, as you said, we talked before about that sort of recruitment piece, which I would imagine falls within your kind of spectrum as well, and ensuring you've got a good run of people that can join the organisation, whether it's lawyers or other support staff. And thinking about that future generation, they're coming in and they're expecting this, aren't they? Is that right?
I'm always a little hesitant to use entire characteristics for particular generations. I think, and again, mainly because inside of that are individuals. However, what I do know is people have needs in their lives that flexibility suit, and that doesn't whichever generation you're in. And again, the role of a leader at the moment is really difficult. We're a paradigm. And what I mean by that is you have to be a very overt, emotional, intended and intellectual leader, because you're having to do things quite differently now and recognise that people are coming to the workforce different. And you're absolutely right. For most individuals, and maybe for the younger generation, that's expected. And that ability to have more purposeful leadership, to be a more purposeful business, is definitely expected. Not yet given, but is definitely expected. So I think if you're not doing that with some kind of commitment or emotion, and in essence putting money being now for this, you'll be found out quite quickly. And we do a lot of awards at TRT, and I'm really proud of them. Really proud of them. they're not the end of the game.
Is that sort of internal?
External. So we're right up. Times Top 50 employer for women. Yeah. We're in the top 75 social mobility index. We featured in top 20 of working families. You have to do some work to get
like groundbreaking in the law
space. But you can also you have to back that up with proper credentials, because your employees will find out quite quickly whether you truly are living that as a culture and environment or not.
And I mean, you talked about the leadership role being more and more challenging, and the shift, really. I'm quite interested in your perspective on that. You've worked at various different large corporate organisations. I'm sure you've seen many different sort of styles of leadership. Leadership has changed a lot. And I think the things I've been hearing from various guests we've been talking to is the empathy, the vulnerability that's needed. And actually, it's just a tougher role to play. How's that kind of, I suppose, rolled out at TLT? Have you got a great leadership team, great sort of leader? Obviously, it's partners. Is it very different? Have you seen that great leadership?
So there's two answers. So leadership's exhausting. Let's start with that, and that's okay. It's meant to be. It is also a prize and a gift to get into a leadership role, because you now have the ability to impact the business, but also to be responsible and accountable for people's lives. That needs to be taken seriously and with care, with absolute care. Yeah. Is every leader brilliant? No, of course they're not, because actually the role of the leader is changing so quickly at the moment. It's quite difficult to keep up at times. And even for somebody who sits in my role, with my background, with my experience, there are times I don't get it right. But that's also part of the future. The ability to make a mistake, the ability to remain open-minded, the ability to keep learning is really important. And I think that's probably the biggest shift that we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. Leaders don't know it all. They don't. What they have is a skill set, background, toolkit, experience level in which they can draw from to be able to do things differently, to use different leadership styles, to use different moments. The open-minded bit is the most important part, because, again, society is different and challenged at the moment. Those societal impacts, those societal moments, they're appearing in your workforce. And you're not going to know it all. It's as simple as that. You can't. And so the ability to remain open-minded, to understand that actually other people's perspectives, where they're at, they're not always the same person every single day, 24 hours a day. That's really, really important.
And being nice. I know you mentioned before, I love that, because I think it's so true, isn't it? Because I think, there are probably various views of leaders in the sort of 20 years ago in some of the sort of very large corporate organisations who are very cutthroat, and it's all about business rather than people, very focused on the numbers, the bottom line, and actually that shift around, as you said, the vulnerability, the empathy, but just being a good person.
So again, I smile because any of my lovely lawyer or partner colleagues who are listening to this, the moment I say nice, they recoil. Often, however, what I will say to them is, we're a client business, we're a people business. And clients want to do work, they want to do business with nice people who've got their back, who understand them, who actually are going to help them overcome the challenges that they have. I also want to work with nice people. It's a polite word. But everybody, most, lots of people don't like the word. However, I want to hang out with nice people. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, completely agree. Equality and diversity in the workplace, just sort of moving on. And we've talked when we met previously about this and some of the challenges, how far we've come. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience, how you've been pushing this forward at TLT, and what we need to be doing in the workplace to ensure we have a equal, diverse workforce?
Your ability to be the authentic you, to be able to contribute your best. If that isn't a business issue, I don't know what is. We are at a really pivotal point in the ED&I agenda, because we've strayed ourselves into a position, again, societally, where we believe one person's opinion is greater or stronger than another's. And it's not. The whole cornerstone of ED&I goes back to that open-mindedness, understanding different perspectives, different views, different backgrounds, different upbringings, but respecting them as well, and respecting the difference, joining the differences in a way that is great for society, but also great for business. we've stumbled ourselves into a little bit where some voices are suppressed, and that's difficult. That's difficult, and that's why we're seeing some unrest in this space. And people are feeling like they can't express opinions and they can't express their views, and that can't.
And can you talk a bit about who those groups are?
There's many. And you know, again, as a woman, sometimes you felt that yourself. You know,
Have you had that? Have you felt that?
Definitely. I mean, for me, my journey went the moment I had children, I made the decision to be known as a working mum. Now, again, some people have difficulty with the word working mum because it defines that those who aren't in paid employment aren't like it. Everyone's working mum. However, I made that decision at that point. It came with its challenges. It's come with its advantages and it's come with its disadvantages, you know, and preconceived views that people have had about my ability to do the job. It also came, you know, nearly 20 years ago, which was a very different time that we find ourselves in now when it comes to gender equality. However, I go back to, if you can't be authentic, I can't be two people. It's too exhausting. I can only be one, you know, and that's the one that you see and you get here now. There's a massive confidence in being able to express that view and being ready for both the challenges and the disadvantages or the advantages it might bring for you. You know, I've spoken before and in many other pieces of media that I've done. The whole piece around men's position currently in the workforce against, you know, what you could arguably call the riser phenomenon is right, by the way, because women's equality is high. You know, 50% of the working population are female, and educationally it's 60% of women that are coming out on top. We have a rolling business, but it can't be at the cost of men. And that is the piece for me where finding that piece where it's equalisation, not acceleration at someone else's cost is really important.
And that's quite a challenge, isn't it? Because you're right. And I know, you know, I've seen the narrative is very focused on female still rather than actually the sort of equal footing that we need to have. And it is challenging for younger men and I think older men as well.
Definitely. And you know, we talk about this purposeful leadership bit. It's about purpose for everybody. And that piece around the purpose for the men's generation, we all need to be worried about the issue of men's suicide. We all need to be worried about it. It's a difficult, you know, nobody ever wants talking about it. It's a hard subject matter, but it is concerning and it's worrying. And you know, for me, I do believe that it's related to the ability for a man to just find his role again, where he stands in what is, we're not going backwards, we're going to still continue forwards, but the only way we can do it is to go together.
Are you able to do anything at TLT on this topic? Is this something you're trying to kind of push forward?
We definitely do. It is so easy to fall in, particularly in the ED&I space, to fall into the moment of only celebrating the good stuff. You know, and a long time ago, we found that it's really interesting. Feast, famine and festivals are the thing that joins everybody together. You know, we all do a bit of both, whether that's got religious content to it or actually it's just about that food. However, started to broach some of those more difficult subjects, whether that's around the mental health moments, whether it's about the suicide prevention moments, whether it's about starting to the conversation around addictions. Because before suicide comes addictions, you know, comes compulsions. You have to start having those conversations. They are difficult because, you know, most leaders, most boards want to celebrate all the really good stuff in businesses. But we're a high-octane business. We ask a lot of people. You bake that against where society sits currently, it means you've got to have the conversation. Now, I'm neither a professional nor am I ready or equipped to deal with some of those difficult subjects. But as a business, your job is right to raise the conversation, to make it okay to talk about it, but then provide the services it means that people can.
And do you have any initiatives that would be interesting for our listeners that you actually have in place at TLT to help your lawyers and obviously additional staff when it comes to mental health?
Of course, we have Mental Health Champions, which is, we have an entire storytelling program in around mental health. You know, I'm really proud because a lot of our people are really comfortable in talking about their own mental health journeys. And that's the, I don't want to use the word normalisation, but it's the introduction of the ability to have a conversation. We've used a couple of high-profile individuals who've come and given talks about their own journeys, and that's the moment going, you know, actually, if you are concerned or worried, You just need to talk to somebody. Now, that might be that you reach to a colleague, you might reach to your line manager, unlikely, by the way. What you might actually do is reach to somebody else. But that person knowing, when they've got that information, what they can do with it and where they can take it, that's the point around that repetitive piece on your communications. Yeah, repetitive and constant.
And how are you approaching recruitment? So legal firms, law firms, obviously a lot of people come through degrees, and obviously that's requirement of becoming a lawyer in many firms. Am I right? Is that changing? And how are you sort of diversifying the application process really into that space?
So you're absolutely right on what used to be absolutely significant educational hurdles, all of which are not attainable if you don't come from a particular type of background. That's not okay, by the way. We absolutely search from different talent pools. We have gone heavy into the apprenticeship route. And again, super proud of that. It's amazing. We have school leave for apprentices. So we take school leavers from 18 right the way through to qualification. It's a 7-year program.
And they actually go on to becoming lawyers.
Absolutely. They absolutely do. So we're in our 3rd year of our, what they call it, we like an acronym. In legal, we call our LSA. And then we have also done apprentices in relation to if you have a degree, but your degree doesn't happen to be in law, then there's an alternative route as well. We have looked at that educational attainment and normalised it. And I use that language really carefully because we haven't dropped our standards, not one piece. What we have recognised is people come through different educational routes with different standards and bring different qualities, and that's why. And so we have 3 different entry routes now. We school leave program. We already have a degree, so you can come and do apprenticeship with us, or our traditional training contract route as well.
Quite pioneering then, and great that
other
law firms doing it.
Some are. They definitely are, not with the numbers. So we take in 50 at what we call early careers. So 50 individuals who want to become lawyers a year. At least 30 of those come through the apprenticeship route and 20 through the training contract route. So we predominantly weight in relation to the apprenticeship route. And again, just recognising that everybody achieves at different rates and different moments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's fascinating. No, it's really interesting to hear that. And I also wanted to kind of talk to you a bit about your own experience as a leader. You touched on it, and obviously you've got all the experience through likes of KPMG, Vodafone, obviously TLT. I think you've been in place since 2017. Is that right? Because obviously you've got the experience of, I would imagine, bringing in leaders and seeing them in their roles, but also yourself being on the board. Am I right? At TLT. And you've talked about kind of about diversity, and it sounds like there is a great gender split. But what have been some of the barriers you've faced, and how have you overcome them as a leader, a female leader?
They've been different in different decades. So I was very blessed about 18, 20 years ago to have my first step into dealing with gender equality, and that was at KPMG. And that was the moment that KPMG recognised it was a really important subject. To be honest, I didn't know that I was disadvantaged until that point. It was a very strange book for me, as you start to work in the agenda and realising, I get paid less. Oh, so actually my career isn't going as quickly. And so it was a bit of a moment of realisation for me. And then of course I've had to make lots of decisions in my career related to my responsibilities. I left KPMG because it was London, because I was living in Wiltshire. I joined Nationwide and Vodafone because they were closer to my home. It was easier for me to manage the whole piece around childcare. Yeah, my husband is self-employed. It's been absolutely great because he's had much more flexibility than I've had. So all those decisions that I just didn't realise I was having to make because I was a woman, not because actually I was a business leader. Now, it is very different now. And the conversation has changed, not as much as it needs to have done, but it is definitely changed. You do still have, and I still have moments, even, when I joined the board, I sat in the board going, what do I mean? And do I think that's female versus male? I don't know, genuinely. But I know my own journey. And I know that I've had to do loads of work about my own inner voice and still have to now. But again, what's really important in a leader, knowing where your connection network is, knowing who your supporters are. those people that you get the right energy from, who you have to make some tough decisions in these jobs. There are times when you're incredibly vulnerable, times when you're bullied, incompetent, times when you want to celebrate massive success, other times when you got it completely wrong.
You'd be quite lonely as well.
Massively lonely. But again, I don't think that's gender specific. Maybe I wonder whether women are just more comfortable in talking about it. Who knows? And, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome relating to females, don't we? It's interesting, isn't it? The narrative doesn't apply or isn't spoken about in relation to men. But you're right. It is lonely. Having that and just knowing where you get your energy from, where you get your resilience from, how you rebuild your ability to get up the next day and carry on, massively important. And so as much as you're collecting on leadership qualities, your experiences, your skills, knowing yourself and knowing how you keep yourself in your tip-top position is equally as important.
And culture, I think it kind of links a little bit back to what we were talking about at the start of the conversation. Obviously, how do you maintain a really strong culture? Obviously, the flexible working practice is part of the DNA and the culture of the organisation. How do you keep that connection going and making sure people are connected and speaking to each other and seeing each other on a regular basis?
So culture is something you can't create. It is often already there, and mainly because businesses have been around quite a long time. You can absolutely mould it and shape it, and your choice of how you mould and shape it is really important. And part of that is to do with what you celebrate, what you ask people to contribute, how you reward that success, what that looks like from a recognition basis, what you're asking to people to do, how they're doing it, and absolutely making sure that's part of your delivery. It's about who you recruit, and it's about making sure that they sit comfortably with what's you. And culture is all about what you hold dear, what matters to you and what's important. It's also about when people aren't culturally compliant dealing with it. And that's also quite difficult. And again, when you're in profit-making businesses, you're dealing with those that are making profit but aren't doing it in the right way is equally as important as celebrating those that aren't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned that Vodafone was particularly strong, obviously, given the kind of the industry it's in when it comes to flexible working. Have you seen a real difference between the different sectors you've worked in terms of that culture piece and how they've approached that?
They all have their own. There's no doubt. Every business has its own personality and its own culture. I mean, personally, I've chosen ones that are values orientated. It is the thing that absolutely has driven, I didn't realise it had, but has actually driven a lot of my decisions about who I work for. And KPMG, great place to work, brilliant values. Nationwide, phenomenon, great place. Vodafone's exactly the same. And interestingly, they all have quite significant UK roots as well. So I've obviously inadvertently managed to work for businesses as well that got a strong presence and contribution to the UK and the UK economy. So for me, I've started off by choosing businesses that care, that worry about the way they do business, that want to do business in the right way. I'm not sure I could work for a business that isn't, but that's become more conscious to me the more experienced I've worked in my career. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And do you think we're quite different? I mean, I'm interested in the kind of the difference between the UK and how we approach this versus potentially a US business.
Definitely.
Are we quite different? What's the differences there?
There's just, you start just with the legal framework in the US. People are very dispensable in the US. We do not have, and the employment environment that we have can be very frustrating if you're running a business, and particularly, see it in the news now for small businesses. It is tricky and it's difficult. However, it does create an environment where we look after our people. The US doesn't. Actually, now again, you then head into Europe. The legal framework indicates how people are going to be treated, depending on what country you're working in. But US, definitely, people are seen as much more in commodity than we do here. And that doesn't sit comfortably for me.
No, I was going to say, I've worked with a few US businesses, but they've got, incredible work ethic. But as you say, very little time off, flexibility, people coming back after 6 weeks from having, maternity leave, which seems incredible in today's world.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it? More than incredible. Again, it goes to what truly is people's purpose in life. Is people's purpose to work? It's important. it's not as important as all the other stuff, and that's the bit around allowing people, again, goes a little bit back to the break we talked about people, those who need to find their purpose now, have found it in work previously. Actually, that ability to be able to do that, but also realize you can still be successful at work. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that future generation, digitally minded, purpose driven. I think you talked about that, definitely. That's what they're looking for, aren't they? When they're joining an organisation, it's not just about, I don't think it is just ever about the salaries. It is about the value they provide. It's about being heard. It's about what they can offer.
So some things still ring true throughout all generations. We all want to come to work to do something meaningful that is recognised. And it's the cornerstone of any engaged employee. In the middle of it, they want to know they've got some fairly clear direction and actually they understand what is required of them. That's universal. You've got the second part, and you're absolutely right with the younger generation with that. And actually the business needs to stand for something as well. So it's not just about me. It's also about the impact that business can have on the wider community, the planet, the place it operates in. And for us, what used to be 10 years ago, that was a differentiator. It's now a given for that generation. The digital element is one that is tricky. Of course it is. Digital's got such a place for good. It's also got such a place for bad. But I do think genuinely, the bit we have to place our trust in, that digital generation, and I know them because that's my children, we need to place a trust that they will navigate this and work their way through it, for the good and for the bad. And it is the future. Again, not going backwards, are we? So you have to embrace digital. We know AI is coming. It's sort of here, isn't it? We'll work it out. It won't replace people. It won't. We'll need to adapt and change, and that's what we're brilliant as doing as human beings. But it's in that next generation that we're going to find that navigation. That's how they live their lives. That's how they've always lived their lives, and that's how they will find the right balance, because it's all about balance.
If you're predicting the kind of how the workforce would look in 5-10 years, I know it's a tricky question, but there are some businesses that have kind of gone back from the flexible working and they're trying to get people back in permanently, on a 4 to 5 day week, or do you think it's going to shift again? Do you think we will go back to being even more remote? What do you think it's going to look like?
So it's fascinating, isn't it? So the board wants them back in, but the people don't want to be.
Yeah,
and that's because they're facing a real estate issue. And so they've made the problem one about square footage and cost, because everyone's got too much office space, not about the people, productivity, and how they work and operate. And again, that will come to its fruition because of this constant battle between your people and your board that won't ever end happily. So there will just need to be that navigation of the change. Do I think everyone will go fully remote now? We'll still need to see each other. It's the bit we missed during the pandemic, isn't it? But what happens now? We come into the office for the things we miss. Yeah. Collaboration, all the creation, all of the connection. We don't come in to do our cerebral work, because why would you when you've got somebody else who's been a bit noisy? There's some practicalities in it. So I think there'll be like everything, the pendulum is swinging hard both ways. It'll come to its natural balance, because it always does.
And have you found retentions being far stronger since the kind of pandemic and sort of the acceleration of the kind of flexible working place?
Attraction and retention,
yeah,
interestingly. So we definitely hold on to and get more out of our people as a result. With the underlying bit, as I said before, is because they know and believe that we trust them. From an attraction basis, we absolutely get people coming to us because we've been so bold in the statement. Now, they think that we're not going to do it. They'll come and they'll have their interview and they'll join us and they'll be like, so what point do I have to come in? You don't. Really?
Yeah.
No, you don't. You don't. We'll genuinely mean it. If your team is working, you're provider for your client, and actually your individual needs are being met, it's perfect for us. So we do, and if you look at the balance in relation to our attraction pipeline, it is norming. It is really interesting, and particularly our lawyers, particularly partners, we find the women are voting with their feet and coming to talk to us because actually they're finding their voice has been lost and not in all first.
I think it's so important, isn't it? If you're going to put in place a policy, you've got to act on it and it's got to be true, as in people have to be able to follow that and not feel that actually once they join, they're not able to. And I have seen that and heard that that happens in many places.
Absolutely agreed. And yeah, if you're going to be authentic and purposeful, you've got to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, it's been so good to talk to you. I have one final question. So if you were joining a new business tomorrow and you were first meeting with the board, what would be one of the key points on your agenda in the role of Chief People Places Officer?
How to treat people. Always. And it has to. People are my thing. And people feeling valued and being able to, for me, it's always been about, I couldn't stand the idea that I sent somebody home upset. That just doesn't sit with me. And actually, I'd always authentically ask that question to the board and be really clear about, you say you treat people like that, show me.
Wow. Well, thank you for those wise words. It's been great to have you here.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Helen.